Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Michael Cremo. He is the author of The Forbidden Archaeologist, Human Devolution, Forbidden Archaeology, along with Richard Thompson, and The Hidden History of the Human Race, along with Richard Thompson. I call Michael the Columbo of archaeology. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Columbo, he was an investigator that would crack any case, find any lies, search out any details. He was the master of investigation. I consider Michael Cremo not only a great author and researcher, but somebody who is cracking every lie, every case, and demonstrating that archaeology is not telling us the truth about our human origins. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the great Michael Cremo to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim, and good morning to all your listeners.
Thank you so much for what you've written here. I look forward to reading your other books. I have completed The Forbidden Archaeologist. I think I understand why you're called The Forbidden Archaeologist, but I want to hear from you. Why do you call yourself The Forbidden Archaeologist?
Because I deal with a lot of discoveries that mainstream archaeology simply doesn't want to deal with. According to the mainstream theories, human beings like us first came into existence about 100,000 or perhaps 150,000 years ago. And before that, we are told, there were no human beings like us. There were more primitive, ape-like human ancestors. And if you go back further in time, there were just some primitive apes and monkeys. And if you go back further in time, just some primitive mammals. So I deal with archaeological evidence showing that human beings like us have been present on Earth for many millions of years, going all the way back to the very beginnings of the history of life on Earth. And this evidence takes the form of human bones, human artifacts, and human footprints, many, many millions of years old. And these things are reported in the original scientific literature, but they're not in the textbooks because of what I call a process of knowledge filtration that operates in the world of science. So that's what I mean by forbidden archaeology. If we looked at archaeology as a big museum, we would see that the public is only let into one small room of that museum, and there they will only see the discoveries that go along with the current theories of human origins. But there are other rooms in that big museum of archaeology, rooms with locks on the doors. So what I've tried to do in my work is take the locks off the doors, open up those rooms, and let people see what's really there. And what's there is a lot of evidence that contradicts the current theories of human origins. There's a lot of evidence showing that human beings like us have been on Earth for millions and millions of years.
I love the part in the book where you talk about the California gold mine and how Darwin's ideas influenced the treatment of evidence here at Table Mountain. Can you share a tidbit of that? Because that's very exciting since we both live in California, but also what was found.
Yes, these were very, very fascinating discoveries. During the gold rush days in the 19th century, miners came to California to get the gold. And to get the gold, they were digging tunnels into the sides of mountains in the Sierra Nevada mountains in the gold mining region. One of these mountains was Table Mountain in Tuolumne County in California. And deep inside the tunnels, the miners were finding in the solid rock human bones and human artifacts. They found for example, many obsidian spear points. They found stone mortars and pestles. And they found these things not just in one location, but in many different locations in the California gold mining region. And what makes these discoveries so interesting to me is that the human bones and the human artifacts were found in layers of rock that modern geologists tell us are 50 million years old and older. And this just completely contradicts all of the current evolutionary theories of human origins. Now, these discoveries were all collected by Dr. J.D. Whitney, who was the chief government geologist of California during that time. And he wrote a massive book about these discoveries that was published by Harvard University in the year 1880. But we just don't hear about these discoveries anymore today because of the process of knowledge filtration. There was another scientist who lived at the same time as Whitney, Dr. William Holmes, who was an anthropologist working at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. And he wrote, if Dr. Whitney had understood the theory of human evolution, he would not have published that report. In other words, he would have known that the facts could not possibly be true. Human beings could not possibly have existed millions of years ago because they hadn't evolved yet, according to the theory of evolution. So, according to Holmes, the reports of Whitney should simply be forgotten. So, and that's what happened. However, some of the artifacts from the California gold mines are still in the collection of the Museum of Anthropology at the University of California at Berkeley. And a few years ago, I was a consultant for a television documentary called The Mysterious Origins of Man that aired on NBC. And the producer had read my book, Forbidden Archaeology, and he wanted to include some of the cases from the book in his documentary. So I told him about these California gold mine discoveries and told him to go to that museum at the University of California. He went there, but the museum officials refused to allow him to see or film those artifacts.
Because of the date of them?
Well, they gave all kinds of excuses. First, they said, well, you're making a television program, you probably have a very tight deadline, and we just wouldn't have time to search through our collections and find these things. But he told them, no, I've got several months. I've got a few months to do the program. Could you kindly have a look? And then they made some other excuses that this wasn't the normal work of their staff. They would have to pay their staff overtime, salary. So the producer said, well, I'll pay all the expenses. That's no problem. And finally, they just said, no.
I thought that was fascinating. I thought it was very telling, including the people that found out about this that tried to get the FCC to block NBC from airing it. Talk about that.
Well, yes. Well, see, eventually we did find some photographs that were taken of the objects at the time of Dr. Whitney. So we did have some images to show on the program. But it's interesting, when a Darwinist scientist in America found out that NBC was going to show this program to the American people, they became very, very angry, because these scientists have a monopoly in the education system. Only the Darwinian theory of evolution can be taught as an explanation of human origins in the education system in the United States and most other countries in the world. So they were very upset that children would go home and turn on their TV and see something on a major American television network that directly contradicted what they were being told in their classrooms, by their science teachers. So these scientists were very angry with NBC for airing this program. They tried to stop NBC from showing it. They didn't succeed. It was shown, and it was very popular. So NBC decided to show it again. And these same scientists then tried to get the president of the General Electric Company, which owns NBC, to stop NBC from showing the program. They tried to organize boycotts of the sponsors of the show, and they made all kinds of attempts to again stop NBC from showing it, and again they didn't succeed.